you look around, these are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our homes to open. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of days, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of days, when we love the least of days. If not us, who will be like Jesus to the least of these? If not us, tell me who will be like Jesus to the least of these. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love. Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons.
the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin-mun. Today is the 8th year of Cheongi, using the calendar that Father declared in 2010. And it is the 6th month and 7th day of that year by the holy calendar, by the heavenly calendar. I want to start with the weather, as we usually do. Right now in the Cheongguk area, it is 67 degrees and cloudy. And the weather report says that there may be a shower this morning, although on the radar I don't see any rain coming. Looks like down in Philadelphia, even as far north as Allentown, there may be some rain right now, or in the very recent half hour or so. But not in the Cheongguk area. But there may be a small shower, and so the weather is going to be better today than was originally forecast, and the temperature too a little bit warmer than was forecast, but still not as warm as yesterday, and getting up to about 75 degrees today. And tomorrow, Sunday, it looks like it's going to be a really nice day, 80 degrees, sunny, and less humid. So that will be a very nice day. All right, let's go to the Rimas for today. First of all, in the Bible, I have in Proverbs 14. Proverbs 14 is where I turned. Chapter 22, verse 14. Proverbs 22:14. Thou shalt beat him with the rod, and shalt deliver his soul from hell. This actually connects with the previous verse as well. Withhold not correction from the child, for if thou beatest him with the rod, he shall not die. Thou shalt beat him with the rod, and shalt deliver his soul from hell. Probably not the favorite verse for many people. In the Cheonseonggyeong, I'm in the, let's see which book this is. Book 5, Earthly Life in the Spirit World, and Chapter 5, The Messiah in the Spirit World, and page 701. Yes, 701. Here, this section is titled, The Establishment of Kingship on Earth and in the Spirit World. It's interesting to me that Father talked a lot about kingship. He even crowned Jesus, and he himself was crowned, and he crowned Hyungjin as the second king of Cheongguk, even doing that 3 times in January 2009, twice in Korea, and then once in New York. And yet people today are surprised to find that we are talking about a king. I mean, where were you? Instead, they're talking about some kind of a supreme council. The section here is not named, is not titled, the establishment of the Supreme Council on Earth and in the Spirit World, and that's not the title. Instead, the title is the establishment of the kingship on earth and in the spirit world. I don't know what their Cheonseonggyeong says. Perhaps they have substituted Supreme Council for kingship. At any rate, this is what Father said in this section. Right after he's talking about the passing of Hyungjin. Right after the unification ceremony, on the day before Hyungjin went to the spirit world, what did I pray? I prayed, promising him, even though you are leaving the physical world, I will choose an adopted son for you as if you were still on earth, and let him join the ranks of the Son. For that reason, I have to give him the blessing on earth. Without doing so, it would be impossible for me to keep my promise. God has sent the Messiah to save the earthly world. You should know that today, in order for true parents to save the spirit world, I have sent a Prince of Love as my ambassador with full authority. Why must I establish such a global foundation on earth? Even Jesus could not reach that position. You should know the fact that for the first time in history, God has a young son whom he can love as his own. For this first time, God loves from the spirit world and true parents love from earth. Thus the two worlds are connected. Since this world was in the realm of fallen love, that is, in the indirect dominion of God, it had no connection with the love of true parents until now. you must know the amazing fact that this has finally emerged. I don't know why did they translate that indirect dominion? That's not what it says in Korean. It says the realm of dominion by the results of the principle, which some people may say it's the same thing, but I mean, if you're going to, there are two ways to translate, right? One is right and one is wrong, and this is wrong. In any case, I thought that was different. Yeah, it's different. But the quality of the translation is not an excuse to completely go back to the original and delete and edit the original. The quality of the translation is a reason for making a new translation, not for making a new original. Some people in Family Federation seem to be confused about that. In any case, as I read this Rima this morning, connecting it with the Proverbs about using the rod, but beat him with the rod and shall deliver his soul from hell. Father is sending Hungjin and him to a spirit world, not sending him to hell, but sending him to heaven or a higher realm of a spirit world. We cannot actually go to the kingdom of heaven alone, but at least to a higher realm of spirit world, and sending him there as Father's ambassador with full authority. Again, that is a kind of a literal translation. I think the actual translation would be ambassador plenipotentiary. But anyway, fully representing Father, but not as his representative body, which is a kind of an ambassador also. But Father did not use that term here. Instead, he said ambassador, but ambassador with full authority, so that Hungjinim could be playing a role there in establishing the kingship in the spiritual world, in the spirit world. So although he died in that tragic automobile accident, he did not die. He went to the spirit world and he lives there as Father's ambassador. Of course, now that Father's there himself, I imagine he does not really need his ambassador as he did in 1984 when he spoke these words. But I'm sure that Hungjinim is working with Father in spirit world now. All right, let's take a short break and we'll come back and we'll start going through the news of the day from a Chunuk perspective.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group, made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, July 29th, 2017, 8th year of Chungi, 6th month and 7th day. I'd like to start this morning with an article about, a couple of articles about North Korea's testing of a second ICBM missile yesterday. And I'm going to be reading an article from the Japan Times first this morning. Japan Times, of course, now that the South China Morning Post has come under communist control, has been trying to become the sort of the premier English language newspaper in Asia. There's certainly still a far cry from what South China Morning Post was during the even leading up to 1997, was it? But it's still trying, and this article, this particular article, seems to be pretty good in that way. The headline is "Ability to Strike More of U.S. Feared as North Korean ICBM Test Splashes Down off Hokkaido." Written by their staff writers. North Korea test fired its second intercontinental ballistic missile in less than a month late Friday. That would be the East Asian time, so here it would have been early Friday. And this occurred, at least the reports of this were coming out very early yesterday morning, I guess. But we really didn't know very much about it. At the time of yesterday's King's Report, we only knew that an ICBM had been fired, or a missile had been fired, but there was no analysis yet. Now we're getting all that analysis. With experts concluding that the launch flew higher and longer than the first and now puts a large chunk of the United States, including Chicago and Los Angeles, within range of Pyongyang's ever-improving weapons systems. So congratulations out there in Chicago and Los Angeles. Japan's defense ministry said the missile launched at 11:42 p.m. Friday. So that would have been about, that would have been about 10 a.m. Here. From Mupyeong-ni, around 60 kilometers or 37 miles from North Korea's border with China, reached an estimated height of more than 3,500 kilometers and traveled about 1,000 kilometers, landing inside Japan's exclusive economic zone, some 150 kilometers northwest of Okushiri Island, a tiny islet about 18 kilometers off the coast of Hokkaido. So that's a lot of numbers there, but so 3,500 kilometers would be more than 2,000 miles. That would be more than 2,000 miles. A height of more than 2,000 miles. That's quite a height. And traveled about 1,000 kilometers. I guess that's about 800 or so miles, I guess. And it landed 168, so about 100 miles off of the Japanese coast, off of the coast of Hokkaido. The rare nighttime launch was fired on a very high or lofted trajectory, which limited the distance it traveled. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said the missile flew for about 45 minutes, a flight that would put it about 5 minutes longer than the North's first test of its ICBM, known as the Hwasong-14, on July 4th. It was expected that there would be an ICBM test on Thursday, actually, and this article mentions it because later on, because Thursday was the anniversary of the signing of the armistice that put the Korean War sort of on hold back in 1953. Of course, that armistice is still there, and North Korea wants to sign a full peace treaty with the United States, and that's one of their diplomatic objectives. So anyway, this was July 4th, of course, the American Independence Day, and North Korea often uses these sort of celebrations to, do kind of their own fireworks display using these missiles. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un observed the second test, which he said had shown the country now had the ability to launch a surprise attack on the entire United States, state media reported. I'm sure they mean anywhere in the United States, not the entire United States. The test fire reconfirmed, this is a quotation from the official Korea Central News Agency, quoting Kim Jong-un, the test fire reconfirmed the reliability of ICBM system, demonstrated the capability of making surprise launch of ICBM in any region and place anytime, and clearly proved that the whole U.S. mainland is in the firing range of the DPRK missiles. That's the official KCNA news agency quoting Kim Jong-un, their leader. The report said that Kim had expressed, quote, great satisfaction, unquote, after the missile hit a maximum height of 3,725 kilometers and traveled 998 kilometers before accurately landing in waters off Japan. KCNA said the test was aimed at confirming the maximum range and other technical aspects of the missile it claimed was capable of delivering a large-sized heavy nuclear warhead. DPRK is the acronym for North's formal name, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. KCNA quoted Kim as saying Friday's test was meant, quote, to send a grave warning to the U.S., making senseless remarks, being lost to reason, unquote, with the North Korean leader adding that, quote, this would make the policymakers of the U.S. properly understand that the U.S., an aggression-minded state, would not go scot-free if it dares provoke the DPRK. If the Yankees brandish the nuclear stick on this land again, despite our repeated warnings, we will clearly teach them manners with the nuclear strategic force, Kim said. So I guess Kim is reading Proverbs 22:14 or 13, withhold not correction from the child, for if thou beat him with the rod, he shall not die. Anyway, his version of Proverbs 22, I guess. So he's going to beat us with his rod, I guess, with the nuclear missiles. In a statement, the Pentagon assessed that the missile was an ICBM, quote, as had been expected, unquote, because the Pentagon had been reporting that there was activity around the North Korean launch site and that they were expecting something to happen, and it was actually expected to happen on Thursday, but it didn't. It happened on Friday. While analysts had said the July 4th ICBM test could have struck parts of Alaska, some experts said the latest launch had significantly expanded the range. David Wright, a co-director of the U.S.-based Union of Concerned Scientists, said that based on the current information, the missile could easily reach the U.S. West Coast and a number of major U.S. cities. Assuming the height and distance traveled are correct, he said, the missile would have a maximum range of about 10,400 kilometers if flown on a standard trajectory. Los Angeles, Denver, and Chicago appear to be well within range of this missile, and Boston and New York may be just within range, Wright said. Washington, D.C. may be just out of range. However, he cautioned that this was dependent on a number of variables, including the size and weight of the warhead that will be carried atop the missile. And this is the one of the unknowns that we have right now. As a former defense minister would say, defense secretary would say, this is one of our known unknowns, that we don't know exactly how far North Korea has gotten in terms of miniaturizing its nuclear warheads. Some nuclear warheads are as large as a refrigerator or even as large as a bus, but obviously can't fit that kind of a warhead onto a missile. And so you have to get it down so it can fit into that cone on the top of the missile. Because most of the missile is being used for fuel and for guidance systems and stuff like that. And so you got to get it up there and get it small so that it can fit, and also has to be light enough that it doesn't significantly reduce the missile's range. A senior Japanese defense official who spoke on the condition of anonymity echoed this sentiment, telling the Japan Times that a number of variables at play, including thrust, speed, and payload, made it a challenge to determine not only the potential range of the missile, but also if missile defense systems could intercept one headed for Japanese territory. The North has unleashed a spate of missile tests in recent years, including 13 this year, according to a database compiled by the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies in California. Of course, most of these missiles were medium-range missiles that were fired out into the ocean. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has characterized Pyongyang's frequent missile tests as, quote, a new level of threat, unquote, and vowed Saturday to tackle the issue. Quote, in defiance of the international community's strong protest and warning, North Korea again launched a ballistic missile, unquote, Abe said after convening a National Security Council meeting. Quote, we strongly protest against North Korea and condemn this in the harshest words. As long as North Korea continues with this kind of provocative action, there is no other choice than to work closely with the United States and South Korea, as well as with countries including China and Russia, and the international community, while further bolstering pressure, unquote, on their reclusive country. Suga, that's the Chief Cabinet Secretary, said Tokyo had immediately filed a protest with Pyongyang, denouncing the firing as a, quote, clear violation of United Nations Security Council resolutions, unquote. The test also came at an uncertain time for the Abe administration as it reels from the resignation a day earlier of Defense Chief Tomomi Inada, who had been ensnared in an alleged cover-up of daily activity reports from ground self-defense force troops on a peacekeeping mission in South Sudan. Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida had been asked by Abe to temporarily assume the defense portfolio in addition to his other duties. In Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump blasted the Kim regime for its, quote, latest reckless and dangerous action, unquote. Kim condemned the test and said that North's weapons and tests further isolate North Korea, weaken its economy, and deprive its people, unquote. The United States, he said, will take all necessary steps to ensure the security of the U.S. and its allies. U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson also lambasted the test as, quote, a blatant violation of multiple United Nations Security Council resolutions, unquote, and urged all nations to quote, take a strong public stance against North Korea, unquote. Tillerson had especially strong words for Beijing and Moscow, singling the two out as, quote, enablers, unquote, of the Kim regime. Quote, as principal economic enablers of North Korea's nuclear weapon and ballistic missile development program, China and Russia bear unique and special responsibility for this growing threat to regional and global stability, unquote, he said. Yeah, this is true, especially under Jiang Zemin, the two presidents back of China. A lot of nuclear technology was transferred to North Korea from China, and also we'll be seeing later on that now Iran is also a major enabler of North Korea. I think Rex Tillerson probably ought to have included Iran. Perhaps in the future he will. Friday's test also prompted U.S. and South Korean military officials to discuss military response options, with the two countries later in the morning conducting a joint live-fire ballistic missile exercise. So North fires a missile. We got missiles too. We'll fire ours. South Korea's Joint Chiefs said the display of firepower showed their capabilities for, quote, precise strike on the enemy's leadership, unquote, the South's Yonhap News Agency reported. So the oceans around the Korean Peninsula are really suffering. People are just keep firing missiles into them. In a statement, South Korean Defense Minister Song Young-moo also said that the U.S. military would deploy, quote, strategic assets, unquote, to the Korean Peninsula in response to the ICBM test. Quote, South Korea and the U.S. jointly fired surface-to-surface missiles and will have strategic assets deployed on the peninsula, unquote, Yonhap quoted Song as saying. He did not elaborate on what assets would be deployed. Strategic assets generally refer to high-profile weapon systems, including stealth bombers and aircraft carriers. Shortly after the launch, South Korean President Moon Jae-in ordered an, quote, alliance move, unquote, for the installation of 4 more terminal high-altitude air defense launchers stored at a southern U.S. military compound in the country, Presidential Blue House said. This represented a sharp reversal of Moon's earlier stance that U.S. forces Korea must wait until the completion of an environmental impact assessment that was not expected to wrap up for several months. So North Korea fires its ICBM, and all of a sudden Moon Jae-in says, oh, wow, yeah, maybe we need those THAAD missiles after all. That's the anti-missile system that the U.S. sent 6 batteries, and 2 were installed before Moon Jae-in came to power. And once he did, he says, well, let's have an environmental impact study before we do any more. But these missiles, prevent missiles from landing in Korea and causing a very huge environmental impact, including killing people, although I'm not sure how much the left is worried about that. They're more worried about the frogs, I think. But anyway, the frogs will have to wait now, because 4 more THAAD batteries are going to be installed, it looks like. Yonhap quoted South Korean officials as saying it would be a temporary or field deployment. I see, a temporary deployment. As for Japan, Ewan Graham, director of the International Security Program at the Lowy Institute in Australia, said the Abe administration's current political situation had left Tokyo in a poor position to effectively respond to North Korean provocations. Quote, Inada, that's the defense minister, Inada's departure and Abe's broader political difficulties leaves Japan ill-equipped to react, said Graham, who also served as British diplomat in Pyongyang. Abe is in a lot of difficulty right now. Beyond Inada's resignation and a number of gaffes by a handful of cabinet members, the Prime Minister himself is also grappling with his own favoritism scandals that have seen his support rate plummet. But despite the inopportune timing, Graham said the launch had highlighted an increasingly clear reality for Tokyo. Quote, Japan is a frontline state, perhaps the frontline missile target for the DPRK in a war, Graham said. So this guy is a former British diplomat who served in Pyongyang, and this is what he's saying. Quote, people in the Japanese system already understand this, quote, unquote, Graham said. Quote, they will be worried how the Japanese public reacts, especially as the missile reentry was visible from Hokkaido. They actually saw it in Hokkaido. Graham was referring to a report earlier Saturday by public broadcaster NHK that several cameras in western Hokkaido had spotted a ball of light descending from the sky at 12:28 a.m., around the time when the missile was believed to be splashing down into the Sea of Japan. The report could not be independently verified. According to Graham, Abe could use the looming threat to seek a so-called conventional strike capability for Japan, something that could include the acquisition of cruise missiles and precision munitions for its new F-35 fighter jets, or at least stoke debate about the issue. Quote, it's tricky for him, as the electorate will suspect Abe of using North Korea to distract from scandal and rally support behind a security crisis, Graham said, noting that the ICBM test could make the North Korean missile threat less abstract to the Japanese people once the missiles are literally in plain view. So for the Japanese people, this is a new thing that it looks like NHK is considered quite reliable among most Japanese. And NHK, the fact that NHK broadcast this image of a ball of light descending from the sky at about the time that the missiles were calculated to have landed off of Hokkaido, I'm sure has convinced many Japanese that this was the North Korean missile, that it had actually landed in Hokkaido within the view of some cameras. That must be quite shocking to Japanese people. So as the as the article mentioned, South Korea has responded by deploying more of the THAAD units that they had put on hold. And here we have a Reuters article on that specific topic. South Korea said on Saturday it will proceed with the deployment of 4 additional units of the U.S. THAAD anti-missile defense system. THAAD, by the way, being the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense missiles. In other words, high altitude terminal means that these missiles go up and shoot down a missile that is on its way down. You can when an enemy fires a missile, there are basically 3 areas where you can attack that missile that's coming towards you. One is when it's first taking off. One is when it's at the top of its trajectory, and the other is when it's on its way down. And so these missiles are the THAAD missiles are designed to attack the enemy missile as it's coming down. That's why it's called terminal. High altitude, so it attacks it at a high altitude. Area defense, it defends a certain area. South Korea said on Saturday it would proceed with the deployment of 4 additional units of the U.S. THAAD anti-missile defense system after North Korea's latest launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile. The deployment of the additional terminal high-altitude defense area defense units have been delayed after the initial 2 units, after South Korean President Moon Jae-in ordered an environmental assessment. China has been notified of the move to speed up the deployment, South Korea's presidential Blue House said. China has angrily objected to the THAAD deployment, saying it does little to deter the North's missile threat while destabilizing regional security balance. It believes the THAAD's radar can penetrate deep into its territory. So if China doesn't want THAADs in the South, the solution is easy. China can go in and eliminate the nuclear threat from North Korea, the missile threat from North Korea. Once that is done, I'm sure it will be very easy to negotiate with the United States for the United States to redeploy these THAADs to some other place in the world where they are more needed. So China's objections are very hollow to me, and I'm sure to many people, many other people as well. All right, let's take a break there now, and we'll come back with more news from a Cheonryuk perspective.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group, made in the USA. Visit car.com today. Car Arms, Magnum.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, July 29th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheonryuk, Hyungjin Moon. And then we're talking about the North Korea and the fact that it fired its second intercontinental ballistic missile. The first took place less than a month ago on July 4th, and now On July 28th, they fired their second ballistic missile, and this missile has demonstrated a longer range than the first. Experts are saying that Chicago, Denver, Los Angeles are probably in range of this missile. If it had been fired on a normal trajectory or a standard trajectory, and said that Boston and New York may be just on the sort of the edge of that trajectory, and on a standard trajectory, and Washington D.C. would be just outside of it. And so, what to do? So the Washington Post this morning, their headline is "Sanctions are the best option against a dangerous North Korea." And Reuters says Japan joins U.S. in imposing new sanctions on North Korea. And Market Watch says White House should tighten sanctions on North Korea, experts say. Fox News, Trump will sign bill imposing stiff sanctions on Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And so forth. And I want to especially look at this Reuters article. Japan joins the U.S. in imposing new sanctions on North Korea. Japan will freeze the assets of 5 organizations and 9 individuals linked to North Korea, including 2 Chinese entities, Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida said on Friday, outlining new sanctions against the isolated state. Japan's announcement came just hours after the U.S. Senate also voted for new sanctions on North Korea, which followed U.S. media reports this week that intelligence officials had assessed that Pyongyang would be able to field a nuclear-capable intercontinental ballistic missile by next year, earlier than previously thought. Now, notice, please, that this is occurring before the ICBM launch. The ICBM was launched in East Asian time late Friday night, almost at midnight, close to midnight. And these sanctions are being imposed earlier in the day. So these sanctions were being imposed in response to previous activity by North Korea. So you can see that the world is actually having a hard time keeping up. North Korea is firing missiles more often than the world can impose sanctions. The U.S. sanctions also include measures aimed at Chinese financial institutions, a senior U.S. official said on Tuesday. China's foreign ministry denounced Japan's decision as unacceptable and wrong. Quote, "We are resolutely opposed to any country implementing any unilateral sanctions outside the UN Security Council framework, especially those targeting Chinese enterprises and individuals," unquote, ministry spokesman Lu Kang said at a daily press briefing. Quote, "If Japan insists on doing this, it will create major political obstacles for cooperation between China and Japan on the Korean Peninsula issue." That was the Chinese spokesman. Kishida told reporters, Kishida being the Japanese defense minister, foreign minister, who's now also defense minister, Kishida told reporters that given the increasing threat posed by North Korea's missile and the fact that no concrete proposals have been made to resolve the issue of Japanese abducted decades ago by agents from North, the steps had to be taken. This is something that I think many Americans don't know. North Korea doesn't seem to be doing this so much now, but in the past, North Korean small boats or ships, small boats and submarines would go up near to the Japanese coast, and they would, especially at night, and they would abduct Japanese citizens off the beaches, or even in small fishing towns and villages near the coast, and take them to North Korea. For various reasons, for example, to train their spies in Japanese language and customs and culture and things like that, and for other reasons that we don't know. And so Japan has been trying for a long time to get the North Koreans to account for these people that they abducted. And so Japan is saying that part of the reasons for these sanctions that they're imposing now is the fact that the North Korea is not responding to this issue, that Japanese demands on this issue fast enough. Quote, this is the Japanese defense minister saying again, "Given that we can't expect meaningful dialogue, increasing pressure on them is essential. Japan will be taking steps to freeze the assets of 5 groups, including 2 from China, as well as 9 individuals," Kishida said. He added that no further details would be made available until various, quote, administrative procedures, unquote, have been carried out. But Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga told a news conference that the groups had engaged in activities prohibited by a UN Security Council resolution. Kishida said Japan had been in contact with key allies such as the United States and South Korea, but gave no further details. North Korea has been under U.S. sanctions since 2006 over its ballistic missile and nuclear programs, and the Security Council has ratcheted up the measures in response to 5 nuclear weapons tests and a series of missile launches. The United States is seeking further sanctions after North Korea tested a missile this month that was believed to be an ICBM. They're referring to the July 4th ICBM, not the July 28th ICBM. U.S. officials said on Tuesday that they had seen increased activity at a site in the western city of Kusong that could be preparations for another missile test within days. And in fact, it did happen on the 28th. But now, what is the effect of all these? What is the effect of these sanctions on North Korea's economy? Let's take a look. CNBC headline: North Korea's economic growth climbs to 17-year high in 2016, despite sanctions targeting nuclear program. North Korea's economic growth climbs to 17-year high in 2016, despite sanctions targeting nuclear program. This is also a Reuters article on the CNBC website. North Korea's economy grew at its fastest pace in 17 years in 2016, South Korea's central bank said on Friday, despite the isolated country facing international sanctions aimed at curbing its defiant pursuit of nuclear weapons. Gross domestic product in North Korea last year rose 3.9% from the previous year when the economy contracted due to a drought and low commodity prices, the Bank of Korea said. That's the Bank of South Korea. The expansion, driven by mining and energy, marked the biggest rise since a 6.1% gain in 1999. North Korea, which counts China as its biggest trading partner, also boosted exports by 4.6%, the most since an 11.8% jump in 2013. North Korea does not publish economic data. The Bank of Korea in South Korea has released GDP data on North Korea every year since 1991, based on information from government agencies, including the South Korea's Ministry of Unification and the National Intelligence Service. North Korea has been under UN sanctions since 2006 over its ballistic missile and nuclear programs, and the Security Council has ratcheted up measures in response to 5 nuclear tests, and copying from the previous article. In February, China also banned all imports of coal from its reclusive neighbor, cutting off its most important export. A Bank of Korea official declined to comment. The United Nations Food Agency said on Thursday North Korea is facing food shortages due to the worst drought since 2001. North Korea's 2016 GDP in real terms stood at 32.0 trillion won, or $28.50 billion, according to the Bank of Korea data, a fraction of South Korea's $1.34 trillion economy in 2016. Mining and manufacturing make up the biggest portion of North Korea's industry, accounting last year for 33.2% of the sector. Overall, exports from North Korea, including trade with South Korea, rose 4.6% last year. So trade with South Korea is also going up to $2.82 billion, thanks to shipments of fishery products, which soared 74.0%, the South Central Bank said. So a lot of fish is being imported from North Korea to South Korea. North Korea's imports rose 4.8% to $3.73 billion, led by plant products and textiles. Although trade between the two Koreas plunged 87.7% last year due to a shutdown of a joint industrial zone in the north shared with the south just north of the border, The North's headline trade numbers were barely affected, the data showed. The Kaesong Industrial Institute was shut down early last year after the North tested a long-range rocket in February, defying UN sanctions. So it doesn't seem that these sanctions are doing much. North Korea has been under UN sanctions since 2006, but it seems that the North is not really bothered too much by it. And even the Chinese ban on import of coal, they say the ban on import of coal, but there are other ways of getting that coal across the border and for North Korea to get money from China in payment for that coal. So it's really not a very, very credible thing. And this is really the problem, that China really played a large role in creating this problem, together with Russia and together with Iran. And I think also other countries, Syria, I believe, also is involved here. And these countries are not taking responsibility for that. And so what does the U.S. do? Just continue imposing more and more sanctions? Of course, imposing sanctions is better than nothing. It can't hurt, but it's not helping very much either. And so what happens? A few days ago, a U.S. high-ranking U.S. military official, was it Dunford, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, I believe it was, spoke at a Security Council in Aspen, Colorado, saying that war with North Korea was not unimaginable. It would be horrific, but not unimaginable. And what he said was that what would be unimaginable would be to have a North Korean missile land in Denver, which now the North Koreans have shown that they are capable of doing. And even if it's not a nuclear warhead, it could be a chemical warhead or a biological warhead. And President Trump has said that that's not going to happen. So how is the United States going to prevent this from happening? That's the problem now. Yes, the war on the Korean Peninsula will be horrific. General Dunford said that the loss of human life would be worse than anything that we have seen since World War II. So worse than the Korean War, worse than Vietnam War, and those are pretty bad. But it would be worse than that. Let's take a break now, and we'll come back with more news from a Chonico perspective in a minute or so.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, July 29th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Jin-moon. While North Korea is preparing to attack us with its nuclear missiles or whatever type of missiles, with ICBMs, with various types of warheads, here in the United States, we are trying to figure out who's on first and what's on second. And yesterday, Reince Priebus is no longer on first. Reince Priebus, the chief of staff of the president, was fired or resigned, depending on who you talk to, and replaced with John Kelly, the Secretary of Homeland Security. So let's look into that. The New York Times article this morning says Reince Priebus, the White House chief of staff, who failed to impose order on a chaos-racked West Wing, was pushed out on Friday after a stormy 6-month tenure, and President Trump replaced him with John F. Kelly, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and retired 4-star Marine general. So now you have a Marine in charge of the White House and the president's staff. Mr. Trump announced the change via Twitter while sitting aboard Air Force One on a tarmac outside Washington minutes after returning from Long Island. Mr. Priebus, who had joined the president on the trip and never let on to other passengers what was about to occur, stepped off the plane into a drenching rain, ducked into a car, and was driven away without comment. Mr. Trump then emerged under a large umbrella and praised his outgoing and incoming chiefs. Reince is a good man, Mr. Trump shouted to nearby reporters. John Kelly would do a fantastic job. General Kelly has been a star, done an incredible job thus far, respected by everyone, a great, great American. But Reince Priebus, a good man. So one is a star, done an incredible job. The other, a good man. Okay. Mr. Priebus' ouster was the latest convulsion in a White House that has been whipsawed by feuds and political setbacks in recent days. The president became convinced that Mr. Priebus was not strong enough to run the White House operation and told him 2 weeks ago that he wanted to make a change, according to White House officials. Intrigued at the idea of putting a general in charge, Mr. Trump offered the job to Mr. Kelly a few days ago. Mr. Priebus said he had tendered his resignation to the president on Thursday, the same day the newly appointed White House Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci was quoted vowing to force the chief of staff out. Even so, as late as Friday morning, Mr. Priebus told colleagues that he thought he would have a week before the announcement to make a graceful exit, but evidently learned otherwise later in the day. Mr. Kelly will take over the corner office in the West Wing on Monday. Mr. Priebus said after the announcement that he had always made clear to Mr. Trump that when the president thought it was time for a new chief, he would support that. The president has a right to change directions, he said on CNN. The president has a right to hit the reset button. I think it's a good time to hit the reset button. You think so? He expressed no bitterness about his removal. I'm always going to be a Trump fan, he said. I'm on Trump team. I'm on Team Trump. And I look forward to helping him achieve his goals and his agenda for the American people. This has always been a question that Trump supporters have had. Is Priebus on the Trump team? Because, before he became chief of staff, he was head of the RNC, the Republican National Committee. And the Republican National Committee was definitely not on Team Trump. In fact, Trump had to run against, in the presidential election campaign, had to run against not only the Democratic Party, but also the Republican establishment and the media and Hollywood. And so it was really doubtful that Priebus was on the Team Trump from the beginning. And it was assumed that the president named him as the chief of staff so as to kind of create at least the semblance of unity. But that kind of artificial unity didn't really work out. And running the RNC was apparently not nearly as difficult as running the White House, especially when people, are kind of really doubting, and maybe for good reason, that you're not really on Team Trump. But Kelly a Marine, sounds like he will be a much better person. Mr. Kelly will be the first current or former general to serve as White House Chief of Staff since Alexander M. Haig in the final stretch of President Richard N. Nixon's administration. Some advisors to Mr. Trump opposed the choice, arguing that Mr. Kelly did not have a political background for the job. The president needs someone who understands the Trump constituency as his chief of staff, someone who has both administrative skills and political savvy, Roger Stone, Mr. Trump's often-on advisor, said, anticipating Mr. Kelly's selection before the announcement was made. The rainy Friday afternoon shakeup added to the sense of instability in Mr. Trump's White House. In six months in office, he has fired a national security advisor, an FBI director, and a holdover acting attorney general, while his White House press secretary, communications director, deputy chief of staff, deputy national security advisor, and legal team spokesman have all left. Privately, even Mr. Priebus's critics wondered how Mr. Kelly would surmount the same challenges, controlling a freewheeling president who often circumvents paid staff members by seeking counsel from a roster of outside advisors. Other aides were left to wonder about their own future. Mr. Trump has considered pushing out Stephen K. Bannon, his chief strategist, according to a White House official who discussed internal deliberations on the condition of anonymity. Several conservative supporters of Mr. Bannon, including Representative Mark Meadows, the House Freedom Caucus chairman, told Mr. Trump on Friday that the president would risk losing base supporters if he let the strategist go. That's true. Mr. Bannon, actually, Steve Bannon, needs to actually be increased in a position and in authority rather than let go. And certainly letting him go would be quite a shock to Trump's base. Even now, with the failure of the health care situation, the repeal and replacement of Obamacare, the base is looking at Mr. Trump more and more with more and more doubt. Of course, we really dodged a bullet with Hillary. We can keep telling ourselves that. But we'll see, what the Democrats have put up 4 years from now. We'll have to see how enthusiastic the base will be at that time, especially if Trump lets go Bannon. That would not be so good for Trump's position. Mr. Bannon also helped bring Mr. Kelly into the administration during the transition and was among those who supported his move to chief of staff, an official familiar with his position said. Mr. Priebus's departure was announced 15 hours after the president's signature drive to repeal his predecessor's health care program collapsed on the Senate floor, and a day after an ugly feud with Mr. Scaramucci erupted in a public airing of the deep animosities plaguing the White House. Mr. Priebus had collaborated with his ally Speaker Paul D. Ryan on health care and pushed a bill through the House only to watch it crater in the upper chamber. See, there's the rub. Mr. Priebus had collaborated with his ally Speaker Paul D. Ryan. There's the rub. Priebus and Ryan. That was the problem. That's the axis there. I'm not going to call it the axis of evil, but axis of something other than good for sure. And we'll have to see what happens with Ryan. It would be great to have someone in that position. Paul D. Ryan, of course, is the Speaker of the House of Representatives. It would be good to have a stronger support of Trump's program in that position. My view is that Reince was very well liked by the president, but Donald Trump is a guy who's all about results, all about results. And he will always be looking not only at everyone around him and their results, but his own results, said Christopher Rudy, the chief executive of Newsmax Media and a friend of the president's. I think he's taking stock and seeing that this healthcare thing that was promised to him by Reince and Paul Ryan was not properly developed. In my view, he's a disappointed customer. Yeah, I would say so. A lot of us are. Mr. Priebus, a former chairman of the Republican National Committee, represented the establishment that Mr. Trump had run against. Thank you, New York Times, for confirming what I said previously. and never won the president's full confidence, nor was granted the authority to impose a working organizational structure on a West Wing that included multiple power centers, including the president's daughter, Ivanka Trump, and son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Always seeming to be on the edge, Mr. Priebus had hoped to last a full year. But in the end, no other White House chief of staff has been forced out after such a short tenure. Mr. Kushner soured on Mr. Priebus, partly because of what he viewed as the shortcomings of Sean Spicer, an ally of Mr. Priebus's, who was the White House press secretary until last week. Other top aides bristled at Mr. Priebus's demeanor or suspected that he was undermining them, while an alliance of convenience with Mr. Bannon seemed to fade in recent weeks. Mr. Trump signaled Mr. Priebus's fate a week ago by hiring Mr. Scaramucci over the chief of staff's objections. Mr. Priebus had blocked Mr. Scaramucci from joining the White House staff for 6 months, and Mr. Spicer resigned in protest. Mr. Priebus and Mr. Spicer had told the president that they believed Mr. Scaramucci, a gregarious but edgy hedge fund manager and fundraiser, lacked the required political experience and organizational skills. In the end, however, those warnings fell on deaf ears. Adding insult to injury, Mr. Scaramucci made clear when he was hired that he reported not to Mr. Priebus, but directly to the president. Mr. Scaramucci quickly engaged in an open war against Mr. Priebus with the president's encouragement. By Wednesday, the new communications chief publicly suggested that the chief of staff was a leaker and threatened to seek an FBI inquiry. And this has been suspected by many that Reince Priebus was the leaker that was leaking all these transcripts and so forth out into the media. We'll have to see what happens now. If those leaks continue, then we'll see that we'll know that maybe, I don't know, but we'll have to see whether the leaks stop. Obviously, Scaramucci now has to make sure that they stop, otherwise he'll be in a tough position. On Thursday evening, the New Yorker posted an interview with Mr. Scaramucci that included a profanity-laced tirade against Mr. Priebus. He called Mr. Priebus a paranoid schizophrenic, a paranoiac who had leaked information against him and vowed to get the chief of staff fired. He'll be asked to resign very shortly, Mr. Scaramucci said. So Scaramucci's words certainly turned out to be true. So, as we are increasingly under the threat of North Korea, we're still trying to, we're fighting amongst ourselves here in this country. And we hope that people can come together, centering on God's will, so that we can block the evil in this world, because evil is growing right now. Seems that evil is growing, and at least its power and its base is growing, and the judgment that is coming upon this world seems to be becoming more and more real. Now cameras are catching the sight of North Korean missiles re-entering the atmosphere as they come down about 100 miles off of the Japanese coast. All right, let's take a break, and we'll be back with more news from a Choni Group perspective after this.
Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear Jesus, to the least of these. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love. Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these. When we love the least of these. Break our hearts once again. Help us to.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, July 29th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second King of Chaniguk, Hyungjin Moon. In this segment, I wanted to go over some developments in the Second Amendment and the right to carry guns and weapons in general that have occurred in the past week or so, past several days, because quite a lot actually has occurred, and it's quite important. I don't think we really got to it during the week. Here on this is a Fox News report. A huge week for guns. This is dated July 27th. A huge week for guns. A federal circuit court has done what the Supreme Court would not. And this is about an important ruling that was done by the Federal Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C. Can government deny Americans one of our most important rights, specifically protected by the Constitution's Bill of Rights, unless we can prove that we really, really need and deserve it? Thankfully, a federal appeals court has ruled in favor of our rights and against government overreach. The 2-1 decision Monday came from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. The court issued a permanent injunction stopping the local Washington, D.C. government from denying people the right to carry concealed handguns in the nation's capital unless they could convince local officials they had a special and compelling need to protect themselves. Though this ruling only affects Washington, D.C., it might have national consequences. Just last month, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear a case, Peruta versus California, that addressed this very question arising out of a local policy in San Diego, California. California, Maryland, New Jersey, and New York have concealed carry rules similar to those struck down by the appeals court in Washington. The Supreme Court can only hear a case if 4 justices agree to review it. Only Justices Neil Gorsuch and Clarence Thomas said the High Court should hear the Peruta case. That's the California case. When the court denied a hearing, Justices Gorsuch and Thomas wrote an 8-page dissent so filled with passion that it doesn't seem a leap to imagine that the late Justice Antonin Scalia whispering as a muse in their ears. Justice Thomas wrote, "Even if other members of the court do not agree that the Second Amendment likely protects a right to public carry, the time has come for the court to answer this important question definitively." Unquote. Thomas then pointed out that in that quote, "the county where petitioners reside, the sheriff has interpreted good cause to require an applicant to show that he has a particularized need, substantiated by documentary evidence, to carry a firearm for self-defense. The sheriff's policy specifies that concern for one's personal safety does not alone satisfy this requirement." Unquote. The dissenting justices were asking a critically important question regarding the San Diego case. Is there a right to bear arms as the Second Amendment to the Constitution clearly states, or isn't there? Edward Peruta and the other plaintiffs in the San Diego case weren't able to obtain concealed carry handgun permits because they couldn't prove to the local sheriff's satisfaction that they needed to protect themselves. In fact, San Diego County Sheriff William Gore has barred almost everyone from exercising their constitutional right to bear arms. The few people who received permits had to beg, plead, and show imminent danger to their lives through restraining orders and other legal documentation before Sheriff Gore was compelled to grant a woman being stalked or some other unfortunate person their right to bear arms. Now imagine if a local sheriff or other official was permitted to treat other constitutionally protected rights this way. Could a police officer search your home without a warrant, even if you don't have some state documentation showing you particularly need your Fourth Amendment rights? Could a district attorney require you to testify against yourself unless you somehow proved to his or her satisfaction that you really, really need your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination? Would you need to justify your First Amendment right to freedom of religion by showing that exercising your particular religious beliefs was absolutely necessary? This absurd treatment of the U.S. Bill of Rights obviously doesn't even pass the laugh test and would endanger our basic liberties. Nevertheless, this is where some want to take government. While history clearly shows that the Bill of Rights was adopted to place limits on government, some on the left incorrectly believe the document actually gives government broad powers over the American people unless those powers are specifically denied. I researched and wrote my new novel, Kill Big Brother, to alert the public to the dangers posed by this view, which threatens our freedom in the digital age. In the new appeals court decision upholding Second Amendment rights in the nation's capital, Wren versus District of Columbia, 2 out of 3 judges got it right. The ruling was authored by Judge Thomas Beal Griffith, a 2005 George W. Bush appointee, and Senior Judge Stephen F. Williams, a 1986 Ronald Reagan appointee. In the majority opinion, Judge Griffith wrote, at the Second Amendment's core lies the right of responsible citizens to carry firearms for self-protection, for self-defense beyond the home, subject to long-standing restrictions. The district's good reason law is necessarily a total ban on exercise of that constitutional right for most D.C. residents. That's enough to sink this law under the 2008 Supreme Court's Heller ruling. This is written by Frank Miniter. He's the author of A Future of the Gun and The Ultimate Man's Survival Guide. His latest book is Kill Big Brother, a cyber thriller that shows how to balance freedom with security without diminishing the U.S. Bill of Rights. That's Frank Miniter, Miniter. You can look up those on, or not Amazon. Sorry, almost said the wrong word. Not the A word, but some other place. Maybe go to your local bookstore and look for it there, or order it through them there. Now, there's also an article on Breitbart, state attorney generals being armed not the same as being dangerous. State attorney generals from Michigan, Texas, Utah, and West Virginia are asking the Supreme Court of the United States to review a Fourth U.S. Circuit ruling and reaffirm that being armed is not the same thing as being dangerous. The attorneys general, and the names are given here, are convinced the Fourth Circuit made a mistake in ruling that individuals who carry guns can constitutionally be searched simply for having a gun. According to the Associated Press, in January, the Fourth Circuit ruled that an officer, this is quoting now, an officer who makes a lawful traffic stop and who has a reasonable suspicion that one of the automobile's occupants is armed may frisk that individual for the officer's protection and the safety of everyone on the scene, unquote. Judge Paul Niemeyer wrote the majority opinion, saying, the danger justifying a protective frisk arises from the combination of a forced police encounter and the presence of a weapon, not from any illegality of the weapon's possession. Attorney General Morrissey, that would be, which one is he? That would be West Virginia. Morrissey responded to the ruling, saying, it is wrong to deem an individual dangerous solely because they are armed. And Attorney General Paxton, that would be Texas, Attorney General Paxton contends the ruling, quote, places a burden on the Second Amendment right to carry a firearm, unquote. Paxton said, quote, the Constitution plainly guarantees law-abiding citizens the right to bear arms, whether through open or concealed carry. We must ensure the court continues to protect the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens. Central to the Attorney General's contention is Terry v. Ohio, 1968, wherein the Supreme Court ruled that police officers may both stop and frisk individuals when specific and articulable facts lead to the assumption of criminal activity. The Attorney General contends that exercising a Second Amendment right does not equate to criminal activity and ought not lead to the presumption of criminality. Yeah, this is good. This is A.W.R. Hawkins is the Second Amendment columnist for Breitbart News. And I've noticed a lot of good articles by this man. I don't know if it's a man or woman, actually, by this person in the last month or two. He's also host of Bullets with A.W.R. Hawkins, a Breitbart News broadcast. He is also the political analyst for Armed American Radio. Follow him on Twitter at A.W.R. Hawkins. Reach him directly at awrhawkins@breitbart.com. So A.W.R. Hawkins in another good article on the Second Amendment. It's good to keep track of these issues because a lot of things are going on and we don't really hear about them. And President Trump was speaking to police officers recently. And this is in Vanity Fair, which is a fairly leftist publication, but we'll see what they have to say, see if we can read through their filter. They're animals, Trump encourages cops to get rough with thugs. Attorney General Jeff Sessions may be the second least loved person in Donald Trump's White House, but he remains a devoted as ever to taking a Justice Department back to 19... where are we getting to the meat here? Okay, well, I'm sorry. Vanity Fair. I thought we could read through that filter, but turns out to be more difficult than I thought. So anyway, yeah, Trump did speak and referred to criminals as thugs and encouraged police officers to really get rough with them. He said. Some of the leftists are very upset by that, but they want to coddle these thugs, these people that are trying to undermine and destroy people's lives. All right, we'll come back in a minute or so with other news from a Chandru perspective.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today. Car Arms, Magnum Research.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, July 29th of 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second King of Chanyuguk. The Chicago Tribune this morning reports that more people are dying from gunshot wounds as Chicago marks 400 homicides. It's interesting. I was reading a Japanese blog last night where the person was saying, Americans carry guns because they don't have a good public security. But it's actually the areas of America where people carry guns that there is good security, and it's the areas where people are not allowed to carry guns, or at least it's more difficult to carry guns, that have poor security. And Chicago is certainly the poster child for that. Chicago Tribune article. Let's see if I can get down here. 4 years ago, it says, Chicago didn't record 400 homicides until just before Thanksgiving. The city has already passed that mark this year. We're still 4 months away from Thanksgiving, but already 400 homicides in Chicago. Chicago is on pace to have a deadlier year than 2016, when gun violence reached levels not seen in 20 years, according to data kept by the Tribune. While fewer people have been shot this year, more of them are dying from their wounds. An analyst of Tribune data, an analysis of Tribune data shows the percentage of fatal shootings is running about 1.3% higher than last year. The percentage had been declining in recent years, but started to rise last year. In 2013, about 15.5% of those shot in Chicago died. That percentage dropped to around 14% the next 2 years, but rose in 2016 to 15.2%, according to Tribune data. So far this year, 16.5% of the 2,150 people shot have been died. Did you see that? 2,150 people have been shot in Chicago this year. And 16.5% have died. 2,150 people have been shot in Chicago this year. Wow. I don't know. Wow. Combined with other cases such as strangulations and stabbings, the number of homicides reached 400 on Thursday, 2 days earlier than last year. With half the summer to go, Chicago is on course to top 700 homicides for a second consecutive year, a mark that had otherwise not been reached in 2 decades. Now, of course, strangulation and stabbings, in those cases too, the victims might have been able to defend themselves with a gun. So it's that's also related to the difficulty to have a self-protection in Chicago. It's not clear what might be driving the increase in homicides, which are often linked to gang conflicts and are concentrated in the west and south sides. Experts have cited everything from the proliferation of guns in the city to the opioid epidemic that could be intensifying disputes among heroin dealers. So experts want to point, well, we got guns, proliferation of guns, and so we have more violence. But if good citizens are allowed to arm themselves, they could be protected. For the first 6 months of 2017, more than 90% of Chicago homicide victims were slain by gunfire, according to police department records. But in New York City, only about 49% of homicide victims are the victims of gun violence. According to the study released in January by the University of Chicago, 72% of Los Angeles homicides in 2016 were with a gun. Chicago had 50 more homicides than New York and Los Angeles combined through mid-June, even though it is far less populous than both. Earlier this year, Chicago police highlighted the link between drugs and violence earlier this year with maps displaying how the locations of shooting and drug overdoses overlapped. The map showed a high concentration of shootings and overdoses happening in the west side near the Eisenhower Expressway, dubbed the Heroin Highway because of the easy access it provides for drug-buying suburbanites. If bad people are shooting each other, that's one thing. But the normal citizens, good citizens who live in those areas, and some people are forced to live in those areas for various reasons. One of the big ones being that the Democratic Party wants to keep people in those areas so that they can get their votes. If those people are forced to live in those areas, then they deserve to be able to protect themselves and not be subject to these this kind of gang violence or this kind of a violence. Other headlines on Drudge. Alien Donald Trump appears in Mexico City billboard. Sewage system failures plague Mexico. Famous rapper robbed while filming video in Oakland. Sleeping less than 7 hours a night. It makes you fatter. Yelp to be digital doula. Clooney lashes out at paparazzi. Scaled our fence. What? He has a fence around his property? Why? I thought these people didn't believe in walls. A Ferrari driver wrecks $288,000 supercar hour after it was bought. I'm sure that the workers who create Ferraris, manufacture Ferraris, are very grateful for that. They can build them another one. A terrorist shouts Allahu Akbar, stabs people in Hamburg market. I'm sure that says no religion, no connection to any religion that we know of, right? Especially not to a religion of peace. Philadelphia ranks highest for rodents in homes. An argument over Magic the Gathering card game leads to stabbing. FBI investigation sullies Sanders' name. Of course, Sanders' wife is being investigated for involvement in a defunct university that basically became defunct as a result of, it looks like, of a bad real estate deal that she was involved in. Katie Couric leaving Yahoo. Kid Rock with huge lead in Michigan GOP Senate primary. Let's take a look at that. DailyCaller.com. Kid Rock, shock poll shows Kid Rock with a huge lead in the Michigan GOP Senate primary. He has said that, or initially he said that he was going to run for Senate. Then he's not so sure. But one of his slogans is, Guns, God, and Trump, I think was one of his slogans. Popular musician Kid Rock, real name Robert Ritchie, has been flirting with a Senate run in Michigan, and a poll out Friday shows him far ahead in the Republican primary and within the margin of error in the general election. Ritchie has yet to decide whether to run for office and released a statement on Wednesday about all the speculation in which he announced he is starting a non-profit group to encourage voter registration. Quote, one thing is for sure, though, the Democrats are shatting in their pantaloons right now. And rightfully so, unquote, Ritchie said in the statement. Quote, "We will be scheduling a press conference in the next 6 weeks or so to address this issue, amongst others. And if I decide to throw my hat in the ring for U.S. Senate, believe me, it's game on for MTHRFKERS. The poll released by, I guess Scaramucci will have his Scaramucci will have his brother there, I guess. The poll released by Trafalgar Group shows that indeed it will be game on if Ritchie runs. The musician leads among potential Republican candidates with 49.62%. In second is undecided with 28.10%. We already have a lot of undecideds in the Senate. We don't need any more. In a general election matchup, Democratic incumbent Senator Debbie Stabenow leads with 43.37%, and Ritchie is at 41.17%. However, when including voters who are leaning towards either candidate, Ritchie leads with 48.6% to Stabenow with 46.09%. The poll was conducted between July 25 and 27. There were 1,078 respondents, and it has a margin of error of 3.06%. Not that we really believe in polls. In fact, there was an article on Breitbart a week or so ago that showed how polls are still using, these poll takers are still using outdated methodologies, and so that is why they continue to get things wrong. But anyway, it's fun to look at these things as a kind of a horse race, have to see what happens there. We'll be waiting for his news conference in 6 weeks or so, as he says. A lesbian mom asks Christian judge to recuse. Tesla's $35,000 sedan arrives, claims 500,000 advance reservations. Musk warns of manufacturing hell. Restaurants adding extra fees to meals to fund health care. That's part of the implosion of Obamacare that's going to have to take place now, it looks like, since the Republicans couldn't get it together to actually come through on their promise of over the last 7 years to repeal Obamacare. This is out of Minneapolis, says some Minneapolis restaurants adding fee to fund health care. Starting Friday, a number of Minneapolis restaurants will include an extra fee with your meal to fund health care. Barbette, the Bryan Lake Bowl, and the Bird are just a few of Ann Bartman's restaurants. She's adding a 3% service charge to customers' checks to offset the rising cost of health care for her employees. It comes to 60 cents for every $20 spent. Health and dental benefits have been a part of Bartman's business for many years. Okay, well, I suppose that makes sense. Passing everything else on to the customer. That's good. That shows the customers the effects of the rising cost of health care. So now we are not only paying more for our own health care, but we're also paying more at the restaurants when we go out to eat for the health care of the employees of that restaurant. And if we're just included in the price of the meal where we couldn't see it, we wouldn't really know that this is why the price has gone up. But here, if they're adding 3%, sort of a health care charge, that really shows us the effect of the implosion of Obamacare. I like that. And if other restaurants are forced to do this, then I hope that they will also put in that extra amount. So health care, 3%, plus 3% or something like that. Rise and Fall of Liz Smith. I'm sorry, I don't know who this is. Yiddish cinema makes comeback starring Nabishes and Nugez. Robot cracks open safe live on stage. That's artificial intelligence for you. So I guess our money's not safe in those safe boxes in the bank. Silicon Valley exec accused of posing as woman, making up sexual harassment claim. That's interesting. Facebook employee homeless, living out of car. Europe's luxury retailers returning to form. Oversight body wants LA sheriff to stop flying drones. Pig owner jailed after 350-pound animal attacks child. Drudge always likes these animal stories. Let's look at this Silicon Valley executive. He denies posing as woman, making up sex harassment claim. So what is it? Is he a man or a woman? Brandon Katayama Hill is accused of using an anonymous blog post to defame a rival. A San Francisco businessman, okay, so apparently he's a man, says he has been falsely accused of using an anonymous blog post to accuse a competitor of sexual harassment. Brandon Katayama Hill, founder and CEO of consulting business Btrax, denied the allegations that were brought against him last week in a defamation lawsuit in San Mateo County Superior Court. "I am falsely alleged for things I have never done," he wrote in an email to this news organization Thursday. "I am working with my attorney to make things clear." The lawsuit centers on an anonymous blog post titled "Happenings in Silicon Valley. I was sexually taken advantage of by a Silicon Valley VC, venture capitalist maybe. While the post, originally written in Japanese, did not name the venture capitalist, Anis Uzaman, CEO of San Jose-based Phoenix venture capitalist, claims it's obvious that the accusations were written about him. The post appeared to have been penned by a female entrepreneur, but Uzaman's lawyers say in a court filing they traced the publisher's IP address back to Hill and now are suing him for defamation. On Wednesday, after this news organization published a story about the lawsuit, San Francisco-based Btrax tweeted a reply. Yesterday, a U.S. website outlet put out information about our company's CEO. This report was completely unwarranted, the company wrote in Japanese. At the moment, we are putting together our response. Why is everybody in Silicon Valley writing in Japanese all of a sudden? Neither Hill nor Btrax had responded to requests for comment for the original story. Uzaman's lawsuit claims Hill and Uzaman work in the same ecosystems, both specializing in connecting Asian companies to Silicon Valley resources, though Uzaman is an investor and Hill runs a consulting company that helps U.S. companies expand in Asia. The lawsuit suggests tension flared between the two last year when Phoenix launched a startup competition called Startup World Cup. That competition directly competed with Btrax's own Japan Night event, Phoenix's lawyers wrote. And in the face of what they call the huge success of Startup World Cup, Btrax ended its involvement with Japan Night last year, according to the complaint. But in an email quoted by DailyMail.com, Hill rejected the idea that Phoenix and Btrax are rivals. Btrax is a design company, while Phoenix is a VC, he wrote, and Japan Night never competed with Startup World Cup, Hill wrote. Hill also denied writing the blog post. Well, anyway, that was all written in English. All right, let's take a break now, and we'll come back in a minute or so with more news from a China perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, July 29th, 2017. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Jin Moon. Drudge likes to mix serious and not so serious articles right under the pig owner jailed after a 350-pound animal attacks child. We have a woman aborts baby at 35 weeks, horrified to discover midwife saved the boy. Woman 18 aborts her baby at 35 weeks and then is horrified to discover the midwife has saved the boy and sold him to her cousin. A woman in a woman in China who had an abortion was shocked to find that the midwife had saved the child and sold him to another family. In April 2013, 18-year-old Lili from Inner Mongolia found out she was pregnant and didn't tell anyone until she reached 35 weeks. Accompanied by her brother, she underwent an abortion, which she was told was successful. However, some 3 days later, she was told by police that the child had been saved by a nurse. The procedure went smoothly, and when it came to pay the costs of the procedure, Lili also paid for the 20 yuan disposal fee of the fetus, reported Sina. The maternity nurse Liang Zhaohua confessed that she felt the fetus had the possibility of surviving. That's amazing. China is a country under communist rule and communist indoctrination and propaganda. And, of course, communist Marxism, Maoism, whatever brand of communism, believes that human beings are nothing more than material and nothing more than animals. And so killing a human being is really no worse than killing a dog or a cat. In other words, it's not really all that bad. And so that's why China has, that's one reason why China has more executions than the rest of the world combined. It's not just because they have a large population, because the executions per capita is also number one in the world. But we see here that a nurse involved in an abortion takes the baby out of the mother's womb, and her original mind starts working, because communists also have original minds. And this woman thought that, wow, I can't kill this baby. It can survive. Now, if this had been in Planned Parenthood in the U.S., what would they have done? Planned Parenthood would have reached in with thongs and would have crushed the baby's skull. Yeah, at 35 weeks. Even the day before the birth, Planned Parenthood does that. So it looks like a communist in China had a stronger conscience and stronger original mind than Planned Parenthood in the United States. Liang Zhaohua said that she heard the child crying and took it out from the plastic bag to rescue. She attached the baby to oxygen and gave it water while she hid it in a cupboard. The nurse was overheard calling someone and asking if they wanted a child, and telling them that she did not know if it was a boy or a girl. She sold it to her cousin and took the child to her home. I see. So the cousin was the cousin of the nurse, I guess, not the cousin of the mother. The headline was ambiguous on that. Local villagers became suspicious of the cousin and informed police of the baby. Some 3 days later, Lili found out that the baby had not died during the abortion and that the child had been sold. Well, the child had been saved also. In maybe the exchange of money, ethically, da-da-da-da-da. But the child had been saved. She saved the child's life. Lily asked the police about the child's whereabouts, but would not reveal where it was. She claimed that the officers then became unresponsive. Yeah, because the mother tried to kill the kid. Lily visited multiple health bureaus and family planning bureaus. However, they would not tell her about her child. Hongshan District Public Security Bureau Deputy Commander Zhang said he came to the conclusion that the baby was abducted. However, a petition would not be filed. I suppose it's a kind of kidnapping, isn't it? But to save the child. Eventually, on January 8, 2014, Liang Xiaohua was arrested on suspicion of child abduction. Lily asked Liang Xiaohua for compensation, including medical costs, lawyers' fees, and support costs of 1.1 million yuan, $124,000. Liang Xiaohua was sentenced to 2 years in prison for the adoption of the child. However, Lily was not granted compensation. Lily appealed but had no luck. In February 2014, Hongshan District Public Security Bureau Deputy Commander Zhang and 3 other members of staff were found guilty for dereliction of duty, but were not handed sentences. The court case was finally closed in May 2017. So where's the kid? I want to know what happened to the child. But it doesn't say. So anyway, the nurse was found guilty of abduction and was sentenced to 2 years. But the mother was not given any compensation. I guess we don't know where the child is. All right. We'll hope that he is alive and well someplace. Let's see. Now, Drudge has a few stories on North Korea and a president to sanction Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And then right under that, it has a story about a man, 72, shoots 28-year-old wife after being told he didn't satisfy financially or sexually. Then another, a 65-year-old held captive, beaten by 33-year-old boyfriend. Threesome from hell. A naked lady falls from balcony, breaks bones. K-12 educators taught how to combat whiteness. Let's look at that for a minute. This is an article and a publication called The College Fix. Original student reported your daily dose of right-minded news and commentary from across the nation. And right there in italics. Conference teaches K-12 educators how to combat whiteness in schools. A recent conference hosted by an Ivy League university focused on integration and inclusion in K-12 education and included workshops on how educators should face white privilege in their classrooms, challenge microaggressions, and address, quote, Eurocentric pedagogical approaches, unquote. I thought they loved Europe, the left. I guess not in pedagogical approaches. The, quote, Reimagining Education Summer Institute, unquote, conference organized by Columbia University's Teachers College was held in mid-July and concentrated on opportunities and challenges of creating and sustaining racially, ethnically, and socioeconomically integrated schools, according to its website. The event in its second year drew 300 participants that mostly consisted of K-12 teachers and principals, the Institute's director, Amy Wells, said in a phone interview with The College Fix. The 4-day conference included plenary sessions, dozens of workshops, and dialogue sessions. One presentation called Whiteness in Schools provided, quote, a history of whiteness and will invite participants into a discussion of how whiteness and white culture shapes what happens in the schools, unquote, according to a description. One workshop discussed, quote, 3 ways to face white privilege in the classroom, unquote, presented by Teachers College postdoctoral fellow Jamila Lissicott. A summary of the workshop states it included, quote, activities and critical dialogue around white privilege to connect personal responsibility to pedagogical approaches possibilities for the classroom, unquote. And a workshop on, quote, teaching for social justice, unquote, sought to challenge colonialist and racist pedagogies. Quote, we will challenge Eurocentric pedagogical approaches that not only underprepare students for the realities of our increasingly multi-ethnic, multilingual, globalized society, but are also rooted in colonial and racist ideologies that stifle the voices, identities, and realities of students of color, unquote, a description states. There was also a deconstructing racial microaggressions workshop in which attendees pledged to address racial insults at their schools. Institute Director Wells, a professor of sociology and education at the Teachers College, said the conference came about out of her belief that the, quote, missing piece, unquote, regarding issues of integration in education is what goes on inside the classroom. Quote, it is about getting kids into the building. And I just think we're always missing the educators who actually do the work and who actually interact with the kids on a daily basis and help them understand race in terms of how they're relating to other students, unquote, she said. Wells said she believes higher education has the knowledge to transform the educational system, but it requires connecting a lot of dots that have been fragmented over the years to bring that knowledge together so people can use it. A number of the workshops at the event were geared toward racial issues and curriculum in K-12 education, and participants were able to gain graduate course credits and continuing education credits by attending the event. Muriel Bouquet, a PhD candidate at Teachers College, led a workshop titled Deconstructing Racial Microaggressions. The seminar sought to, quote, help participants identify ways in which educational systems perpetuate racial microaggression, both within classroom practices and within the institutional climates, unquote. The training focused on increasing educators' ability to recognize racial microaggressions, understanding their effects on students of color, and helping the educators gain accountability in taking remedial action to overcome racial biases that lead to microaggressions, unquote. Participants in the workshop also took a pledge to address microaggressions at their respective schools, according to a tweet from BUQUE. How do you pronounce that? Book, I guess. Other workshops touched on topics such as using hip-hop as a form of therapy in schools, instituting restorative justice for student discipline, and examining segregation and desegregation. I don't think America has an answer, or these people also don't have an answer to the issue of race relations, because the Democratic Party is using this kind of identity politics where people are cast in certain identities and then targeted or with different messages. Teaching people that we are all human beings under the same God would seem to be the answer for overcoming these kinds of racial situations, not just race, but other biases as well. But somehow, if you take God out of the classroom and out of the schools, and if you take God out of society, and you even try to teach children that this whole religion thing is just a bunk and a myth, then you remove the one tool that you can actually use to overcome racial tensions or racial biases and racial relations. But they will continue to try everything that doesn't work until they finally come around to trying the one thing that does. Shell CEO, next car will be electric. Yesterday we had an article about how Britain is going to ban, actually all of the UK is going to ban gasoline and diesel cars by, 2040, I think it was. Even though this is going to cost the consumers more. But Shell CEO says his next car will be electric. Electric vehicles are most certainly the future of the automotive industry, and you need only look at the outlawing of gas-powered vehicles for proof of that. That was Wednesday, actually, that we were looking at that article about the UK. But if you needed one more piece of proof to add to the pile, CEO of Royal Dutch Shell, Ben van Beurden, has some news for you. Van Beurden, whose position atop Royal Dutch Shell makes him the shot caller for his wholly owned subsidiary Shell Oil, says he's ready to embrace the electric future, and he's buying an electric vehicle in September to prove it. Oh, his next car will be electric. I see. Okay, Shell CEO. So he's just going to buy an electric car. All right. The next buy I do is my next car, which will be an electric vehicle, Van Beurden noted in an interview with Bloomberg. The CEO didn't expand on that comment during the rest of his chat, but a Shell spokesman took the time to explain exactly what he meant. It seems Van Beurden has been eyeing a Mercedes-Benz S500e, which, while not entirely electric, is indeed a plug-in hybrid. He'll be ditching his current car, which happens to be diesel, when he makes the purchase of his new car in September, declaring that he's ready to personally move to a vehicle less reliant on the very commodity that has grown his company to the multi-billion-dollar behemoth it is today. Seems likely a bad PR move, but that's only if you believe Shell want to also become a leader in rapid charging electric vehicle stations, hydrogen or natural gas as well. The move towards greener energy alternatives will require Shell and its kin to adapt, and Shell has already declared its willingness to embrace electric charging sooner rather than later. All right, well, Europe is going further down that road. Electricity, of course, where does electricity come from? Either coal or oil. So I'm not sure how much of this is going to actually save the environment, unless they're going to switch to hydroelectric production in Europe, which I doubt that they are. In fact, a lot of Europe is nuclear powered energy, much more so than the United States, especially places like France that have a much higher portion of their electricity coming from nuclear power plants than the United States. I don't know about Netherlands. And I don't even know where this man lives. It doesn't say where this interview took place. But this is part of the. This is one of the effects of the global warming hoax that has been perpetrated on people, and so the people that are shutting down tried to shut down the coal industry in the United States. Fortunately, President Trump is reviving that, and now the oil industry as well. A lot of attack is coming on that, and we'll have to see how far it goes before people finally realize that this whole thing about the climate change and shutting down the fossil fuel industries is a hoax, and the inconvenient truth is that it is completely wrong, and that it was a way for Al Gore to become very, very rich, but not much else, and make a lot of other people very, very poor, but not much else. All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back with more news from a Chonic perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Won't you look around? These are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our homes to open. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. If not us, who will be like Jesus to the least of these? If not us, tell me who will be like Jesus to the least of these. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love. Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for July 29th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon. We're in the 8th month of Cheongi, the 6th month and 7th day by the heavenly calendar. You know, many of us in my generation and perhaps other generations as well, have very fond memories of, in our younger years, of being in Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Brownies, and Girl Scouts. But these organizations have really been taken over in many cases. I don't know about the Girl Scouts, but certainly the Boy Scouts have been taken over by this new sort of transgender LBGQ RST WXYZ agenda. And some important articles that we need to know about that have appeared today. On Breitbart, there's a article that says the Boy Scouts organization complained Thursday that the President Donald Trump's July 24 Jamboree speech was too political, only 6 months after its progressive leadership suddenly redefined boyhood to include transgender girls. That's right. Boy Scouts of America has redefined boyhood to include transgender girls. You kind of had to see that coming. Quote, I want to extend my sincere apologies to those in our scouting family who were offended by the political rhetoric that was inserted into the Jamboree, unquote, said a statement from Michael Serbal, the chief scout executive for the Boy Scouts of America. He continued, that was never our intent. The invitation for the sitting U.S. president to visit the National Jamboree is a long-standing tradition that has been extended to the leader of our nation that has had a Jamboree during his term since 1937. It is in no way an endorsement of any person, party, or policies. unquote. The apology was prompted by widespread complaints from anti-Trump parents and groups about the president's rambunctious speech, during which the huge crowd of youths chanted, "We love Trump." Some progressives complained the speech looked like a Hitler Youth rally, effectively describing American scouts as young Nazis. Trump's speech was welcomed by the scouts and by many of the adult volunteers in the scouting organization. One parent supporter, Rick Byman, posted this message on the website announcement of Serbaugh's apology. Quoting here, "For you to plead that the BSA is non-political is a sham. The bending to political will of the various activist groups in the change of membership policy and leadership policy several years ago demonstrates the BSA is very political. Or you just cared more about corporate dollars than what had been a long-standing policy. Trump gave a marvelous speech. I heard it, and then I read it. To whom are you really serving these days?" When making his apology, Serbaugh insisted the Boy Scouts have not been a political organization under his watch. For years, people have called upon us, quoting now, to take a position on political issues, and we have steadfastly remained nonpartisan and refused to comment on political matters. We sincerely regret that politics were inserted into the scouting program. He also insisted that the focus of the Boy Scout organization has not changed. This is the head of that BSA. The focus of scouting remains the same today as every day. Trustworthiness, loyalty, kindness, and bravery are just a few of the admirable traits scouts aspire to develop. In fact, they make up the Scout Oath and Scout Law. In fact, Serbaugh has helped to flip the core mission of the Boy Scouts organization from a focus on helping boys to mature into self-reliant, confident, and patriotic men towards the tasks of marketing progressive claims to teenage boys. In January, for example, after a few weeks of secret debate by its corporate-dominated governing board, Serbaugh accepted and established the progressive claim that boys' biology is not a guide to their sex, character, or adulthood life. That message was built into its announcement that anyone can join the Boy Scouts if they claim to have a male gender identity, regardless of their biology. He said, "We and others have recently been challenged by a very complex topic on the issue of gender identity. For more than 100 years, the BSA, along with schools, sports, and other youth organizations, ultimately deferred to the information on an individual's birth certificate to determine eligibility for and participation in many programs, especially single-gender programs. After weeks of significant conversations, at all levels of our organization, we realized that referring to birth certificates as the reference point is no longer sufficient. Communities and state laws are now interpreting gender identity differently than society did in the past, and these new laws vary widely from state to state. Starting today, we will accept registration in our scouting programs based on the gender identity provided on an individual's application." Wow. Boy Scouts of America. In July 2015, the scouting organization also ditched original focus on helping young boys mature into fathers by accepting scout leaders who say they are gay. That acceptance effectively endorsed the progressive demand that homosexuality should get the same level of social status as heterosexuality. The 2015 decision was welcomed by pro-gay groups as a gain in social status. For decades, the Boy Scouts of America's ban on gay adults has stood as a towering example of explicit institutional homophobia in one of America's most important and recognizable civic organizations. It is difficult to oversee the importance of today's announcement, said a statement by a group called Scouts for Equality. The Scouting Group's board is dominated by progressive-leaning corporate executives, including Randall Stevenson, CEO of AT&T, which is now lobbying against a Texas bill to protect the sexual privacy of K-12 kids amid pressure by transgender groups to allow boys into girls' bathroom and shower facilities. CEOs and top executives from more than a dozen major Dallas-based corporations, including American Airlines, AT&T, and BNSF Railway, delivered letters to GOP leaders decrying the bathroom bill as a proposal that would seriously hurt the state's ability to attract new businesses, investments, and jobs, according to Texas Tribune. What happened to bravery? Some of the Scout leaders are eager to ditch evolved and proven social practices. For example, Gregory Nelson, the mountain bike program director at Boy Scouts of America, posted this May 2016 progressive message on the organization's website. So this is a post on the Boy Scouts of America website. I endorse the recent changes. We have no business taking any position on sexuality. We are not anti-gay or pro-gay. We have no position. There is no sex merit badge. The true conservatives always knew that Scouting should not be in the business of ruling on human sexuality. We got rid of a position that put us squarely in one camp, a camp we had no business being in. Now we are out of the judging game. Thank God. Now let's go back to being the school of the wilderness instead of the school of sexual morality. If someone asks if we are pro-gay, we have no position either way. We let others deal with that one. We are too busy creating better people. So I guess a boy and a girl can get into the same sleeping bag as long as the girl says that she's a boy. Apparently that's the case. The leftward lurch of the Scouting organization has spurred much criticism and the creation of a rival organization, according to Todd Starnes, a host of Fox News and Commentary. The adult leadership of BSA has allowed the organization to become a playground for the gender and sex revolutionaries. In January, BSA sacrificed its last vestige of integrity on the altar of political correctness by allowing girls who identify as boys to join Scout troops. And where was BSA leadership when the mainstream media compared the president's speech to a Hitler-Nazi youth speech? So spare the righteous indignation, Mr. Scarborough. I would urge every parent with a child in a Boy Scouts to consider an alternative Scouting organization, Trail Life USA. Trail Life is a faith-based Scouting program that stands on a firm foundation. There was a time when the Boy Scouts of America taught young boys and young men to make moral and ethical decisions. But those days are long gone. Let's go. That was that last part was a quote from a article by Todd Starnes, a host of Fox News and Commentary, and I'd like to actually go to that full article by Todd Starnes because it is titled "The Time Has Come for Every Red-Blooded, God-Loving Patriot to Sever Ties with the Boy Scouts of America." And I think just like we are severing ties with Amazon because of Amazon's monopolistic business practices and also because of Jeff Bezos' very sort of globalist, left-leaning, leftist political stances. So the king has said that we should spend our money with the people who share our ideals. So also with these Scouting organizations, even though Boy Scouts of America is an incredibly strong brand, and I really, a lot of kids, the very few years that I was in the very short time that I was in the Scouting program, I learned how to tie a few knots, learned a few things about knife safety, went on a few hikes, and unfortunately my scout leader, was very much into marching, and we marched around an auditorium. That was one of our, every time, anyway, in between marching, we did learn a few knots and about knife safety, but marching was his thing. So anyway, I suppose marching is not all bad. But so Boy Scouts of America is an incredibly strong brand with parents and grandparents and it's sort of a given that you would want your children or grandchildren to become Boy Scouts. But no, we see that that's not the case, that we need to reevaluate these things and to put our children in programs that we sure are sharing our ideals. Certainly the programs that are developing around the Second King in Northeast Pennsylvania would be excellent programs for children and for teenagers and for young adults. But here, let's go through this article about this a man on Fox News who says that the time has come for every red-blooded American, every red-blooded, God-fearing patriot to sever ties with the Boy Scouts of America. On Thursday, the Boy Scouts and those who identify as Boy Scouts took it upon themselves to apologize to President Trump's speech delivered to some 40,000 people at the National Scout Jamboree. In doing so, the leadership of the BSA has brought shame and disgrace upon what was once a storied and revered organization. Quoting then from the apology, I want to extend my sincere apologies to those in our scouting family. We've already read that, so we can skip over that part. In doing so, he went on to say BSA regrets that politics were inserted into the scouting program. You can read his entire screed here. Who exactly was offended by the president's remarks? And we can go to his speech at Todd Stearns, toddstearns.com. Who exactly was offended by the president's remarks? He was greeted with tremendous welcome, thunderous applause and cheers. Thousands of scouts had chanted his name. If there were those who took offense, their numbers were considerably small. Quite frankly, I contend the only people who truly offended by the president's remarks were liberals, like mainstream media, Hollywood starlets, and BSA leadership. And I suspect they were more offended than that Trump's name elicited cheers, while former President Obama's name elicited jeers with great gusto. Serbaugh went on to write in a lengthy blog posting that the Boy Scouts have steadfastly remained nonpartisan and refuse to comment on political matters. This is a patently false statement. The adult leadership of BSA has allowed the organization to become a playground for the gender and sex revolutionaries. In January, the BSA sacrificed its last vestige of integrity on the altar of political correctness by allowing girls who identify as boys to join Scout troops. And where was the BSA leadership when the mainstream media compared the president's speech to a Hitler Nazi youth speech? So spare us the righteous indignation, Mr. Serbaugh. I would urge every parent with a child in the Boy Scouts to consider an alternative scouting organization, Trail Life USA. Trail Life is a faith-based scouting program that stands on a firm foundation. There was a time when the Boy Scouts of America taught young boys and young men to make moral and ethical decisions, but those days are long gone. I guess now the moral and ethical decision that needs to be made is to get kids out of Boy Scouts and into this organization or Trail Life USA or other similar organization. It says here that the Trail Life is a faith-based organization. Looking at their thing here, their website here, our core values, it says, of Trail Life USA. Christ-centered, it says at the top. Trail Life USA is a Christian outdoor adventure program that emphasizes and teaches biblical moral values and requires all adult members to agree with, sign, and abide by the Trail Life USA Trinitarian Statement of Faith and the Statement of Values. The program is unapologetically Christian. However, the program is designed and intended to be presented without being churchy or religious, focusing on outdoor adventure, character, and leadership development. The analogy for this principle has been referred to as carrot cake. The carrots in the cake are not in big and obvious chunks, but are still present throughout the entire cake, as are the assumptions of a Christian worldview throughout the entire program. At the same time, the TLUSA program is not intended to replace or compete with other youth groups, Bible studies, or church programs, but rather to complement them and give youth an opportunity to exemplify and demonstrate Christian values in their relationships with others. Well, hopefully they'll also teach kids about knots and knife safety in between the Christian worldview. All right, let's take a break, and we'll be back again in about a minute or so with more news from a Tony Group perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for July 29th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon. And we will take a look now at the economy and how that is doing. It says here that on CNN Money that the U.S. economy accelerated during the first full Trump quarter. The U.S. economy gathered momentum during the first full quarter with President Trump in charge. Economic growth accelerated to an annual rate of 2.6% from April through June, the government said Friday. That was about what economists had expected. Second quarter growth more than doubled the sluggish pace from the first 3 months of the year. First quarter economic growth was revised down to 1.2%. The economy gained steam in part because of stronger consumer spending, according to the Commerce Department, helped by the strong job market. Personal spending grew at a 2.8% pace, faster than in the first quarter. That's a relief because despite stronger consumer confidence, Americans have been unwilling to spend more. The economy also benefited during the second quarter from increased federal government spending. The real economy remains in good shape, Andrew Hunter, an economist at Capital Economics, wrote in a report. Growth was held back by the housing market, though. Residential investment, which includes houses and apartments, tumbled by nearly 7% last quarter. Exports also slowed. Overall economic growth is well short of 4%, the promise that Trump made as a candidate, but it is getting closer to the moderate goal of 3% that he has set since taking office. Now, when Obama came into office, his economic projection was that there would be 3% growth. But actually, during the Obama administration, the U.S. economy never grew at 3%, not even once, not even for a single year. And so when President Trump came into office, as it says here, when he was a candidate, he was talking about 4%. But when he published his budget plan, it assumed a 3% growth. And all these economists that have been supporting Obama were just outraged. They called it irresponsible. They brought out their "people will die" cry again. Every time, anybody moves in a way that they don't agree with this. Oh, people will die. Because Obama was never able to make 3%. And it would be devastating to them if if the economy under Trump is able to achieve a 3% growth during a single year. Now, of course, this is 2.6 in one quarter, April through June, and these GDP estimates get revised. This is the first report of this quarter, and then it'll get advised. What is it? Twice, I think, or 3 times even. So, and sometimes it gets revised up, it gets revised down. So we'll have to see how this plays out, and how this quarter plays out, how the entire year plays out. The first quarter has now been set, I guess, to 1.2%. That, of course, it was the first quarter being January through March, and that was during the time that Trump was being inaugurated and just coming into office and things like this. And just signing some executive orders that got rid of a lot of the regulations, and at least they got a start on getting rid of regulations. And I think it's because of the getting rid of some of those regulations that the economy is picking up. Anyway, that's my feeling. Because the fewer regulations you have, the easier it is to do business, and the more jobs are created, and the more people have to spend, and the more things get bought, and the more things get bought, the more things get made, and et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, let's continue with this article. Trump's election and promises of massive tax cuts and infrastructure spending lifted expectations on Wall Street and among economists of faster growth. But Trump hasn't been able to get his economic agenda through Congress, so these expectations have been dialed back. Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Really hasn't been able to get the massive tax cuts. And in fact, he was saying that before I can cut taxes, I have to solve the healthcare thing, and now the healthcare thing has failed. So what's going to happen to the tax cuts? That's a concern. And the infrastructure spending, what's going on with that? We haven't heard much about that. But Trump hasn't been able to get his economic agenda through Congress, so these expectations have been dialed back. Last week, the International Monetary Fund lowered the U.S. Growth forecast for this year and next because of uncertainty over the timing and size of Trump's policies. And the U.S. dollar, which rallied after the election, has retreated sharply in recent months. Just for fun, let's see what the IMF is saying about the U.S. economy. Nothing good, I assume. IMF slashes U.S. growth forecast for 2017 and 18. This is on July 24th. And let's see, they're saying the IMF on Sunday lowered its economic growth forecast for the United States to 2.1% for this year and the next, down from 2.3% for this year and 2.5% for next year. That had made that prediction back in April. This is a far cry from the 4% growth President Trump promised on the campaign trail and significantly lower than the 3% growth he has targeted since assuming office. Okay, you guys, all you leftists, let's remember Obama never made 3%, and you were working as hard as you can to keep Trump from making 3%. The global financial institutions cited the uncertainty, et cetera, et cetera. Fiscal policy will be less expansionary than previously assumed, given the uncertainty about the timing and nature of U.S. fiscal policy changes. The IMF also listed the U.S. economy's sluggish start to 2017 with the first quarter growth of just 1.4. Of course, that was been revised down now in the last couple of days to 1.2. The downgrade comes as the U.S. prepares to release its growth numbers in the second quarter this week. Okay, so that's what the IMF is saying. And, a lot of people are more and more people, especially people who claim to be experts, pointing to an economic slowdown, even an economic crash or a steep slowdown later this year or next. And part of that is they certainly do not want Trump to be successful in the economy because it's going to, if he is successful, that would increase his chance for being reelected. And Certainly, they do not want that. I'm sure that over the next 3.5 years, there will be all sorts of things being done to prevent Trump from being reelected at any cost. And I think crashing the economy would certainly be among those. This is an article about sluggish but durable, 5 things about U.S. economy's expansion. This is published yesterday, after this numbers were published by the government. The U.S. economy acquired an exclusive label Friday, recession-free for 8 full years. Yet the third longest economy winning streak in American history still doesn't get much love. No wonder. Despite its longevity, the expansion has delivered subpar gains in its pace of growth, full-time hiring and pay increases since it emerged from the wreckage of the Great Recession in June 2009. It's the weakest economic recovery since World War II. And the gap between the richest among us and everyone else has widened. Well, that's because of the reason that that's widening is because of government regulations, making it difficult for people to start their own businesses, have to hire lawyers and go through all sorts of expenses in order to start businesses. And that's what is widening the gap between the rich and the poor. A report out Friday showed the U.S. economy revved up this spring after a weak start to the year, fueled by strong consumer spending. So that's already repeating what we read before. The economy is hardly the disaster that President Donald Trump insists he inherited. Employers have been hiring steadily month after month since 2010. A majority of Americans now enjoy unusual job security. Staying power. The National Bureau of Economic Research has been measuring U.S. recessions and expansions since the 1850s. Over that time, from President Franklin Pierce's administration to Trump's, only 2 expansions have matched the lifespan of the one that officially began in June 2009 and has endured for 96 months. A 106-month expansion that ran from February 1961 to December 1969, when President Lyndon Johnson stoked growth with spending on domestic programs and the Vietnam War, and a 120-month streak that began in March 1991 and ended in March of 2001 after the dot-com bubble burst. What's more, job market has been enjoyed a remarkable run. Employers have added jobs for 81 straight months, easily the longest streak on record, and the number of Americans applying for first-time unemployment benefits has stayed below 300,000 for 125 straight weeks. That's the longest such streak since 1970, when the population and workforce were much smaller. Combined with the other 2 long-lasting expansions, the current one looks well weak. America's gross domestic product has grown less than 10% over the past 8 years. America's gross domestic product has grown less than 19% over the last 8 years, much less than the 51% growth posted in the first 8 years of the 1961-69 expansion and the 34% of the same span of the 1991 to 2001 expansion. Job growth has been consistent but hardly robust. A big reason is just how bleak the job picture was 8 years ago. The Great Recession wiped out 7.4 million jobs, and the job market didn't actually hit bottom until February 2010, 8 months after the recession ended. Over the past 8 years, the number of U.S. jobs has risen just 12% to 146 million. Over the same span, job gains had surged 30% in the 61-69 expansion and 18% in the 91-01 expansion. The current recovery was stunted at the outset by lingering wreckage from the financial crisis. Customers stopped borrowing after having charged too much on their credit cards and having watched their home values sink. Banks struggling with bad loans tightened the credit. Since then, the expansion has been hobbled by a slow-growing labor force and by a puzzling slump in worker productivity, which is the amount of output produced per hour worked. Job growth exceeded 200,000 a month in 14 and 15, but has been trending lower. So the U.S. economy still going forward, and the initial signs for the second quarter are good, but we see many people see rough waters ahead, and so it would be good for people to to be very, very conservative, I think, in their plans. And if you have cash laying around, put it into real assets, such as real estate, gold and silver. That is what the king is recommending, and so that we can survive any kind of a huge economic downturn that may be coming. And I would not be at all surprised if that happened. This has been a long expansion, as it says, and the Fed is not going to allow the expansion to continue forever. So at some point it's going to go down. And we don't know how far it's going to go down, but we know it is going to go down, and probably within the next 12 months there will be a downward turn, and we'll have to see how deep that is. But really, a lot of people are going to be trying to do everything they can to keep Trump from getting reelected. And if the economy is in a good shape 4 years from now, it's going to be tough to do that. Actually, not 4 years from now, 3 years from now. It's going to be tough to prevent his reelection if the economy is in a good shape. And so they will try very, very hard to time the business cycle, the economic cycle, to make sure that Trump gets the blame for any kind of economic downturn and economic difficulty that people are experiencing. All right, let's take a short break now, and we'll come back with more news from a Tunic perspective right after this.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for July 29th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Youngjin Moon. And let's look at that article about Donald Trump's address to the law enforcement. Last time, in an earlier segment, we tried to look at it through Vanity Fair. That was a disaster. So we'll look at it through Breitbart this time. That'll be much better. President Donald Trump delivered a tough message to MS-13 and other gangs during a speech to law enforcement officials in Brentwood, New York, Friday. Trump referred to the gang members as animals who spread fear and death throughout America's cities and towns. Together, we're going to restore safety to our streets and peace to our communities. And we're going to destroy the vile criminal cartel MS-13 and many other gangs, he promised. Trump also vowed to defend law enforcement and stop criminal illegal aliens from crossing the border. From now on, we're going to enforce our laws, protect our borders, and support our police, like our police have never been supported before, he said. Criticized by some city mayors who were trying to prevent deportations or setting up their communities at sanctuary cities. I've met police that are great police that aren't allowed to do their job because they have a pathetic mayor or a mayor who doesn't know what's going on, Trump said, as the police officers in the room applauded and cheered. He also touted his decision to reverse former President Barack Obama's effort to stop military equipment from going to law enforcement officials across America. I'll tell you what, it's being put to good use, he said. That was a concern. I mean, under Obama, we had armored personnel carriers and things like that going to city police departments, and what? That is not a good thing. That does not seem to be a good thing. That could be used in a very, very bad way. A much better way to fight crime, obviously, and to fight gangs is to make it easier for people to own guns. That would be a much more effective way, rather than sending military equipment to police. I think the president is off on this one. The president blamed past political weakness for the failure to enforce the border and the country's immigration laws. Failure to enforce our immigration laws has predictable results, he said. Drugs, gangs, and violence. But that's all changing now under the Trump administration, he added. Trump also repeated his promise to build a wall to stop drugs from coming across the border. We'll build a good wall. We're going to build a real wall, Trump said. We're going to build a wall that works, and it's going to have a huge impact on the inflow of drugs coming across. The impact of drugs coming across is driven by demand, and although I oppose the war on drugs, it would be good if taxes could be lowered so that people could give their money to community organizations that are providing treatment and counseling to people who are on drugs, or who also education to young people who might be thinking about possibly using drugs. I agree with the wall because of its role in immigration, but drugs, not so much, because the drug runners will find other ways. They'll dig tunnels, they'll use planes, they'll use boats, they'll use various kinds of mules. Right now, there's a Fords manufactured in Mexico are coming across, being imported back into the United States to be sold here, and drugs are being found inside those cars. The wall's not going to stop that. So I agree with the wall, but don't expect much in terms of the drug trade. It's not going to be very, very effective there. Here's an article. Trump's ban on transgenders in the military is more than meets the eye. President Donald Trump earlier this week tweeted out news of his ban on trans people serving in the military. Quote, after consulting with my generals and military experts, please be advised that the United States government will not accept or allow transgender individuals to serve in any capacity in the U.S. military, unquote, Trump explained. Our military must be focused on decisive and overwhelming victory and cannot be burdened with the tremendous medical cost and disruption that transgender in the military would entail. The president may regard trans people as a burden, but Japan and other enlightened cultures in the Orient embrace them. They admire the trans community for, in particular, its martial qualities. On their home planet of Cybertron and back here on Earth, Transformers fight as fierce warriors. You had me worried there for a minute, Breitbart. The Transformers indeed know decisive and overwhelming victories, such as at the Battle of the Iacon and through the ambush of Floron III. So regarding this ban, as with so much in life, there's much more than meets the eye. After all, what army in the world would not want to follow Optimus Prime, a TTM truck-to-man transformer, into battle? His Eon Blaster and Energon axe surpass the capability of any weapons system currently employed by the U.S. Armed Forces. By morphing from a biped into an 18-wheeler into a fighter jet, the leader of the Transformers wields amazing versatility regarding transportation too. And here lies the rub. To robots, Transformers remain human. To humans, they remain robots. even within the RCDT, robot, cyborg, droid, thingamabob community, Transformers struggle to find acceptance. So like fatsos, geezers, and beardos, the American military regards them as weirdos. To send out the tweet at 6 a.m. without consulting the Council of Autobot Elders sends a clear message of disrespect. Singling out Transformers by name as unfit to serve while not including GoBots in the order looks like a clear case of discrimination. Hollywood and enthusiastic chronicler of the combat heroism of Transformers surely responds to this presidential snub. America's enemies, weary of the prospect of a hasty, confused retreat when facing a charging throng of Transformers, cheer this decision. More tellingly, humanity's enemies, the Decepticons, cheer it too. All right, so this guy had fun writing that. Maybe after a few beers, I don't know. Anyway, that's good to see. People having fun. McDonald worker says he was fired after posting photos of a disgusting ice cream machine. Tesla delivers a first lower-cost Model 3 cars. Bellwether, now he's sorry. California imam preaches sound bites of hate. This is an interesting case where the guy in a sermon said that Jews have to be annihilated, and now he says he's sorry. He only meant to say that they should be destroyed. Okay. California, sound bites are funny things. Just ask a politician who's uttered something stupid in front of a smartphone and lived to regret it. But here's a sound bite that grabs your attention. Oh Allah, liberate the Al-Aqsa Mosque from the filth of the Jews. Oh Allah, count them one by one and annihilate them down to the very last one. Yeah, that's quite a sound bite. Those words, separated by 2 sentences, were spoken this month by Amar Shaheen, the Imam of the Islamic Center of Davis, California. It represented about 2 minutes of his 52-minute kabuth or sermon. When it went up on the mosque's YouTube page, there was understandably vehement denunciation from people who accused him of calling for genocide. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is a holy site for both Jews and Muslims in East Jerusalem. Earlier this month, after 2 Israeli soldiers were shot to death near the mosque, Israel installed electronic scanners that visitors were required to pass through. Muslim leaders deemed this an insult to their faith and organized protests. This week, Israel removed the scanners. Shaheen told the Washington Post he was calling for the annihilation only of the Jews who were at Al-Aqsa. So what? If that isn't hate speech, what is? Would a call to eliminate only Muslims who hate America be acceptable under those rules? That's when funny things started to happen. Arab scholars claim that Shaheen's words were mistranslated by MEMRI, the Middle East and Media Research Institute, a not-for-profit group that tracks hate speech in the Middle East and posts videos on its website. Bellwether asked an Arabic speaker to listen to Shaheen's remarks. The verdict, he called for the death of the Jews. Other apologists said the words had to be put in context. Only 2 minutes of the khutbah, I guess you pronounce that, called for people to be annihilated. They also noted that the imam was angry. Then the capper, as a result of the public outcry about the sermon, Muslims in Davis were afraid they might be targeted for violence. On Friday, Shaheen sounded like a naughty schoolboy in the principal's office. He told a news conference in Davis, "I am deeply sorry for the pain I have caused." Islam gets away with everything, says Nooni Darwish, who was born Muslim but converted to Christianity after 9/11. Along with her apostasy, her book, Wholly Different, Why I Chose Biblical Values Over Islamic Values, won her death threats from Muslims. She adds, "The preachers who make these statements about Jews try to cover up their meaning by saying they're just using the words of the Prophet Muhammad, and no one can criticize what Muhammad said. And to quote, Muhammad is pure Islam. They know that and use it. Steven Stalinsky, Memory's executive director, says this kind of shell game hate speech goes on all the time. He spoke in English and then goes into Arabic, Stalinsky told me about Shaheen. Then people say it was in reaction to something Israel did, so that justifies it. But in the sermon, he didn't mention exterminating Israelis. He said Jews. Stalinsky also notes that Shaheen had delivered a similar sermon a week earlier, also posted on YouTube. Hate speech is hate speech. It shouldn't be camouflaged by calls to God to do what clearly God wouldn't want us to do. And it shouldn't be tolerated by any faith. This is written by John Moody, Executive Vice President, Executive Editor for Fox News, a former Rome Bureau Chief for Time Magazine. He is the author of 4 books, including Pope John II, a biography. So this guy got caught, and there's a nonprofit organization that keeps tabs on these people to see what they're saying. Anti-terror raids lead to arrest in Sydney. I don't hear much about Australia having terrorism, but seems that that is happening. Anti-terror raids lead to arrest in Sydney. Federal police in Australia took at least one person into custody Saturday afternoon as officials conducted 3 anti-terror raids in Sydney. The Sydney Morning Herald reported that the raids were prompted by information about a suspected terror cell and a plot involving an aircraft. The police action took place in the Surrey Hills, Lakemba, and Wiley Park districts, the report said. The police bomb squad was reportedly still at the scene in Surrey Hills, where nearby streets remained closed. This is a developing story. Let's see, it's Saturday evening now, or getting towards a Saturday night, I guess, almost sundown now in Eastern Australia. And they're telling us about the Sunday afternoon. Anyway, this is a developing story. We'll have to check back on that later on, perhaps at a future broadcast. Widow of Apple's Steve Jobs buys Atlantic Magazine. Freak golf cart accident kills Florida woman who famously sought wedding crashers. 9 cities poised to be the next Silicon Valley tech hub. No bail reduction in California crash recorded on Instagram. Anthony Scaramucci's wife files for divorce. Democrat pile on. Hundreds of challengers already filing to take on Republicans, I guess, in next year's midterm election. Maybe the Democrats may think that they have a chance to defeat the Republicans in the next year's election. And if things keep going the way they are now, I wouldn't be so surprised if they turn out to be right. That can't repeal health care, can't get tax cuts, can't do the infrastructure, can't. Democrats are entering the 2018 congressional races in record numbers, largely motivated by Trump resistance movement they hope will extend into next year. An analysis of the Federal Election Commission's 6-month report for midterm candidates showed 209 Democratic challengers with at least $5,000 raised, by far the biggest batch of challengers for any year dating back to 2003, according to statistics kept by the Campaign Finance Institute. The July 15 FEC summary also shows 105 of 241 House Republican incumbents so far have a Democratic challenger with such a war chest. Out-of-power Democrats have crowed for months about the prospect of voter dissatisfaction with President Trump and congressional Republicans, spawning a 2018 wave election in their favor. I think a lot of it is inspiration meets opportunity, Max Zilber, a California-based Democratic political consultant, said of the large Democratic field. It's Donald Trump first and foremost, but they're also being driven by a lot of donors and activists out there. And frankly, some people were a little more complacent under Obama, and they're finally taking that step. New York Democrat Representative Joe Crowley recently said that the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee has more than 350 candidates lined up for next year's races, in which his party would need to win 24 more House seats to take control of the chamber. No district is off the table, said DCCC Chairman Representative Ben Ray Lujan. To be sure, historical trends for the party that doesn't control the White House suggest an opportunity for Democrats to make big gains in next year's midterms. Beyond Trump's record low approval rating, pulled down by the Russia meddling collusion probes, Capitol Hill Republicans continue to struggle to pass an Obamacare overhaul as it promised during the 2016 campaign. Well, the fact that the Russia meddling collusion probes have not produced any information, I don't know why Fox News is saying that that is a cause for thinking that Democrats will succeed next year. I would think that actually the opposite is true. That would be a cause for the American voters to say, hey, look, you guys gave it your best shot and you came up empty, so we're going to vote against you. That would be more likely to me. But for some reason, this Fox News writer is saying that is working in disfavor for Republican candidates. However, Democrats face big challenges, old and new. The party still appears split between establishment voters like those who voted for Hillary Clinton in last year's presidential race and the progressive wing that backed Democratic Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders. Also, a big challenge is that they don't have any vision, right? Except we don't like Trump. In addition, Republicans continue to out-fundraise Democrats. And Democrats' massive candidate field raises questions about whether the party's political infrastructure might be overextended and whether overcrowded primary races could leave the winners bruised going into November 2018. The anti-Trump campaign platform also has failed so far to help Democrats pick off Republican-held seats in 4 special House elections this year. Yeah, they lost all 4. So what does that say about next year? Eyeing a reset, Washington Democrats on Monday officially rebranded their party and message, promising a better deal. A better deal for voters with better paying jobs and other economic opportunities. A better deal. We'll have to see how that turns out. A better deal. Not very specific, is that? Make America great again. That really tells you something, Or I think next year's slogan is going to be Keep America Great or something like that. That's a far more powerful message than a better deal. A better deal? Is that what Obama gave us? Anyway, we'll see. Certainly, Republicans are going to have to get it together somehow, and are going to have to start uniting with the president if they're going to maintain their position in Congress, in both the House and in the Senate. And I hope that this new Chief of Staff, John Kelly, retired Marine Corps general, is able to whip things together. Maybe a little Marine Corps discipline would be a good thing for the Republicans right now. All right. Thank you for joining us. We've come to the end of our broadcast, and hope you have a good weekend. And that if it's raining in your area, enjoy the rain. If it's sunny, enjoy the sun, and get out into nature. And don't play video games all day, but just enjoy God's creation. Godspeed, God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.